And I hope that this diagram gives you a sense of just this massive space in which so many different sort of protocols and so many different sort of applications is being built as we speak every single day. And I don't even think that this list contains like, all of the things, but at least it highlights a lot of the cool applications already happening. And also, the sort of the categories in which you're looking at. For example, there's a lot of things that's happening in stablecoins that I'll go into a little bit more. There's a lot of things that's happening in prediction markets, in the sense that these days people can set up decentralized market for prediction, for gambling, for anything that you want to do. If tomorrow you want to predict if it's going to be raining or if it's not, you can create a market of your own and you can set it up on something like Ogre to do it. And then similarly, you have marketplaces. I think these days marketplaces is very popular, especially if you're into things like non-fungible tokens. There's a lot of marketplaces in which you can trade your collectibles, your favorite artist collections, even songs. In the future, you can trade a lot of the things in which these marketplaces, again, they're decentralized in the sense you can create your own marketplace. If you have a lot of interesting collectibles, you can start being the trader. You can create a market in which people come to your market, buy and sell different collectibles and stuff based on the sort of protocol that you want to run. And then there's other things such as exchanges and liquidity and custodial. I would say highlight custodial service is actually a really important thing. I don't know how familiar you are in terms of what's the definition of custody, but essentially what is actually very unique about blockchain is that, when I create an Ethereum address, for example, I actually create a corresponding private key that can then match to my Ethereum wallet address. And then I have a corresponding public key to do it. Now, why do I need these different keys and what are they used for? Essentially, having your own private key is a claim to your own assets. And what that really means is no one else can take your asset away from you. There's no such thing in which, say, a centralized entity, like, say, the law enforcement or governments, can just confiscate your assets away from you. Why? Because if they don't have the private keys that corresponding to that wallet address, they cannot unlock the assets on the blockchain and take that money away. It's whoever holds the private key will have that claim to the underlying money. But on the other hand, if you think about it, if you do lose your private key, somehow, if you lose your private key, if you give your private key away, or if a hacker hack into your computer and steal your private key, then immediately they become the owner of your money because they have then the private key. They can then steal the money from your account, transfer that money away on the blockchain. Now, this is where the custodial service comes in. Being a custodian means the keeping safe of something. And in the blockchain world, the custodial services is trying to keep safe of your underlying private keys. And it's actually a very important service for a lot of people. If you're not sophisticated, if you don't know how best to keep your private keys, there's third party these days that provide that custodial service for you so that they can keep safe of your private keys and give it back to you when you want to use it. And there's a very complicated system because you can imagine the third party could just being bad players. They can just steal your keys and do other things instead. But there's a very well-run algorithm such that they won't be able to do so. So that's why I want to highlight custodial services is actually really important in terms of having really sophisticated both software and hardware program to really protect the safekeeping of your private keys in blockchain world. So this is kind of give you kind of an overview, very quick, sort of 500-degree sort of overview about what is the decentralized applications as of today. And just to dig a bit further, because there's a lot of decentralized applications, and you probably heard of the word DeFi. DeFi stands for decentralized finance. Now, where does that decentralization kick in? It kicks in when it comes to the governance structure in terms of how things are run. Again, if you look at our current system, if you look at the Chase or like Wells Fargo as being these sort of high street retail banks, they're not decentralized because who runs these banks is the sort of board of directors, is the bank themselves, centralized entities that run the entire organization. When it comes to decentralized finance, is the collective people who own that protocol, who own that platform, runs the system. And that's very different if you think about it. Because if I buy into a protocol, if I pay money to have a stake, to have a share in a protocol, in effect, I become the shareholder. I become a partial owner of that protocol. And I have a say in terms of how that protocol, how that business can run in the future. And that's what we call decentralized, sort of either finance, decentralized application, is whoever have a little bit of a share of that, you actually have an influence into the direction of how that system is going to run in the future. When it comes to finance, there's a lot of innovation that is happening as of today in terms of understanding, decentralized finance. In the future, on top of blockchain, you can raise money on your own by creating these protocols. It's based on things like crowdfunding or peer-to-peer lending system and such. There's no central entity that runs any of these lending protocols. It's all up to the platform, the collective owners of that platform themselves to actually run something which is safe and governs the system. And if that system doesn't work, people vote by their money. People can leave the system, choose another thing. So it is completely sort of up to you whether you believe in a protocol. If you believe in it, you should subscribe to it. And by subscribing to it, you can pay money to become a shareholder or stakeholder in that protocol and trying to influence the direction of the future. So if you look at decentralized finance, and I'm looking at this graph, which is from October 2017 all the way up to here, the scale is massive. The amount of money that is now being sort of in part of the decentralized finance, it was originally close to $0. And now, in about 4 years' time, it jumped to $100 billion. This is the scale we're talking about. How much money, how much activities is going on in terms of people, putting all the different collaterals, different assets into these financial protocols to do things like lending, staking, borrowing, a lot of these new ideas, which might be very limited to do in our traditional financial system, now becomes possible. First, because there's now more programmable ways to do things, like the smart contract system I described before. But also, most importantly, as I said, it's to do with the fact it is decentralized. The governance structure is fundamentally different that allows people, anyone, if you have an idea of how to do it, you can implement things on top of the blockchain. And let's see if other people want to use your protocol to do things. So just to give you a sense of how much of growth has been experienced pretty much in the last 5 years, is really exponential. Now, with all the excitement, don't know if you, maybe I should minimize that. With all the excitement, I do want to kind of take a pause and take you back to the digital currencies world and what it means, because you probably heard a lot of words like crypto, stable coins, NFTs, and all the likes. And that might be confusing because things are used interchangeably. But it's important to actually keep a very clear idea about the state of the world and where you're looking forward in the next 5 or 10 years and what you might expect. So typically, the cryptocurrencies is the most well-known type. You have things like Bitcoin, you have things like Ethereum, even Dogecoins. These are part of the cryptocurrencies. They're just money that's being created on top of blockchain technology. Bitcoin is built on the Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum on the Ethereum network. And on these networks, they have different rules, again, written into code, written into programs, saying how much money should be created in the system and how much money you can mine every single day or every single hour based on the protocol that has been implemented right from the beginning. So these are cryptocurrencies, right? It's being created in a programmable way, and it's built on something like built on a decentralized ledger technology. Now, the next generation of cryptocurrencies are things like DAI, maybe you've heard of that, that's coming from the Maker protocol, or like USDC, which comes out of the Circle consortium. These things are called stablecoins. So this is the next generation of cryptocurrency. Why? Because as you probably know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're very famous for being very volatile. The price can go up or down by 15, 20% within a single day. There's huge volatility in terms of the prices themselves. Now, a lot of people don't like that much of a volatility, especially if you are trying to use those money to spend. For example, I don't want to spend money today to buy a cup of coffee, knowing that, later on my money might increase by 50%. I might just well use cash instead of the Bitcoin because, I just wasted away my Bitcoin to buy coffee when I could have held the Bitcoin for longer and could have appreciated in price. So if you think about it, when you're trying to use things to spend money or like to receive money, you'd rather that price to be stable so that you know what you're getting yourself, right? And this is where the stablecoin notion comes in. We want the money to be stable in its price relative to something underlying. So I want my money, for example, the crypto money that I create to be stable in value, for example, relative to my dollar money I have, or to say the gold price of the world. These sort of assets, what we call like the dollar, like the euro, like the pounds, or like things like gold, or even house itself, those things tend to be relatively stable in a reasonable amount of period of time. And therefore you want to create like stable coins, for example, that is 1-to-1 in value relative to these underlying, so that you achieve stability through that kind of attaching yourself to something stable, and this is how you achieve the stability. So this is the next generation, I would say, stable coins. They've been around for about 4 or 5 years now, and the reason that they got created by people was realizing the fact that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are hugely volatile. If I want to use it for some other purposes, I want some sort of stable value of money, and this is how the stable coins come in. Now, looking forward, there's the two categories which are super exciting. And at Visa, I lead the things to do with central bank digital currency. So I'm personally very super passionate about the future of central bank digital currencies and what they present. There's also a lot of things happening around non-fungible tokens, which I'm sure a lot of you guys might have already dabbled into this space. So firstly, what is central bank digital currencies? So central bank digital currencies are still very much conceptual. We don't really have any central bank digital currencies as of today, but you should expect that in about 5 years' time, you're going to start having those things called CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies, the most simplest way to think about it is a digital version of cash. Today, the only way in which you can hold central bank money is really through the physical dollar bill or the physical whatever bill or coins you have in your hand, because any money that you save in your bank account, they're actually created by your bank itself. It's not actually created by the central bank. Now you might wonder, does that make a difference to me every single day? The answer is probably not, unless you think your local bank is going to go bankrupt tomorrow. And then that's when you'll probably be really panicky and think, I better just convert all my money to cash so that I know my cash still will have its value, rather than saving it into a place that might go bankrupt. So it's really during time of crisis, I would say, you realize the difference. But it's still a nice way to have a digital version of cash, especially if you think about every single day, the way we spend money is more and more digital overall. Wouldn't it be nice to have something which is a digital version of the cash that can be stored on your mobile phone, or even using like credit card or debit card or whatever in the future to spend those cash-like money? So this is a lot of central banks these days are exploring this notion of central bank digital currencies. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, things are going to become a lot faster, and you might even hold these CBDCs down the road in your mobile phones very soon. And then the last but not the least category is the non-fungible tokens, which is just huge and I think really like booming in the past 12 months. Non-fungible tokens is interesting because in a way, they're not really currencies. Currencies by nature are meant to be fungible in the sense my $1 bill is the same as the $1 bill you hold in your hand. If I give you $1 bill, you give me $1 bill back. That's it. Like it's totally fungible. Nothing is different. We both still have $1 bill. However, if I have one collectible and you have another collectible, these two collectibles are most likely going to be worth differently based on the perception of how much you value for those, and also the supply factors, a bunch of reasons that might give you different prices to two very similar, say, pictures that are created on blockchain. And you probably know things like the Bored Ape Yacht Club. There's other things that is like even CryptoKitties. That was one of the earliest type of NFTs that's being created. Every single collectible has their own intrinsic value. They're unique, they have their own characteristics. And if you're good at gaming, I think you are very familiar with the concept of trading different swords, trading different whatever token or like merchandise, which could be different in value. And these are becoming much more popular on top of the blockchain technology as well. And it's what's called NFTs. These days, there's huge trading volume behind NFTs. I think people are still exploring that mostly as a way to kind of looking at what is collectible, what should I kind of be investing my money, and in the future, it will just increase yield. But I think more and more, people are looking to more real life usages. So if I just want to maybe leave as a last thought, think about things like in the future, if you graduate, say, from the Inspirit, and you graduate with a certificate, that certificate belongs to you and you only, because it should have your name on it to say, so and so have graduated on this day from the Inspirit. Now, instead of just holding that certificate, you can actually think about minting that certificate on the blockchain. As I said, blockchain is a append-only data structure. Whatever you put onto the blockchain can never be deleted in the future. So if you put that thing on the blockchain, it will forever be on the blockchain, even in 100 years' time, right? And that's kind of cool if you have a certificate that is on there, and to show your ownership, to show that your graduation of a program, and it can always be used to anyone, to any sort of employer, to any schools, because that record keeping is publicly viewable. Anyone can go into that to verify that you have indeed graduated from Inspirit, and no one can ever sort of change your name, the date, or anything of that record in the future. So that's kind of cool to think about. And that, again, is a sort of a variation of what an NFT could be. So plenty of things going on in digital currency space. And I would just say that, a lot of people like Cash App, Square, Robinhood, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, all these payment provider companies as of today are really actively exploring digital currencies, because really, as things becoming more digital, we need to understand what's the implications of all these different categories of digital currencies. And as companies, what kind of new services or products they can provide to the younger generation in the future to make things a lot more exciting for them as well. So I think that's pretty much it. And we probably have about 10 or 15 minutes to leave for any questions that you have for me. And I hope you guys enjoy the talk. And definitely, I think there's a lot of stuff in the crypto space to explore.